It's going to be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's going to be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
9. Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
Alabama back on top of the college football world.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to another Football to the Max. And yes, it's been, probably about 30 weeks since we did one of these. Yes, and we at least we picked a really good time because the 2016 NFL schedule release has happened, so we'll get to talk about that. We will be talking about some news here, the Josh Gordon failing a test, the sad passing of Will Smith, and a few other things. And here we are continuing our off-season analysis deal. That is still ongoing. We're almost done with it. Getting into that NFC West with the 49ers and Seahawks. So we'll get to that there at the end. But guys, it has been a while. How has everything been going?
Yeah, you guys left me behind to go do all the fun Wrestlemania stuff. And I was stuck here watching the Jets continue to fall apart and the NFL hating on them and bad things happening.
Oh, there's one thing, and after that busy WrestleMania weekend, which was very busy, it was crazy. I'll say this, the Jets, things may not always look good. They're not a good team. They're not a bad team. Right now, they're the team. And what the team we'll be talking about tonight on this podcast quite a bit.
Oh, my God. Really?
So just had to bring that out. So anyway, but no, seriously, it has been busy, and I've definitely missed this show so badly because we've had all this NFL news, but things have happened. Sean has been gone. He had to travel back from Texas to back to Miami, so we definitely missed everybody out there, and we want to thank our partners also over at the lastwordonsports.com. We appreciate those guys over there, and good thing we're back on there. So.
Yeah, we should be with this episode. The WrestleMania stuff was fun. The whole, getting married, all that stuff, and kid's birthday. Now, finally, I guess all the holidays for a little bit are out of the way. So, at least until Mother's Day, I guess, right? So, yeah. We can focus on the football and that draft that keeps getting closer and closer. At this point, so we might as well get into this news because it's not the stuff that people want to hear us talk about. We will talk about the schedules and our team schedules and the national schedules and all that here in just a little bit. But, it's finally happened. Some more bad news for Johnny Manziel. Drew Rosenhaus has fired him as an agent, or he is, I guess,
as a client.
And fired him as a client, and it says that Johnny Manziel is in a life or death situation right now and needs to get some help. Of course, this is also Manziel, I think, was involved in some kind of other incident. Aside from the one that he's receiving some legal problems for. And that was kind of like the whole, okay, well, obviously you're not learning much here. And then, of course, Josh Gordon, not to be left behind of anything, picked him up afterwards. And then he also failed his NFL administered drug test that would allow him to come back into the league. Now he has to wait till August to hear about that, and I'm assuming would also mean he has to take another test. Former Cleveland Brown and a current Cleveland Brown doing stupid things.
Yeah, this is terrible. Both these guys are the example of what not to do, really. And they can't get their life straight, which has affected their professional careers. And I think both of them could have pretty good professional careers, especially Josh Gordon, a guy that proved that he could be one of the better receivers in this league. And to throw it all away for extracurriculars, things that really don't make your life positive at all, it's a shame. It's sad. And it's just a waste. I hate to say it that way, but it's just a waste of a good talent. And especially a life, because he could have such a good life. He could make his kids and his grandkids have great lives. Right now he's choosing to throw that away so he can do other things. And Manziel, he's been a spiral out of control ever since he left Texas A&M. So I don't even know what's going on with that train. I think it's a mental thing.
Yeah, listen, with the Josh Gordon stuff, I'm in a mixed bag in this situation. I'm not one that smokes pot or anything, but I'm not against it. I don't care what people do. I know that the laws are starting to lax on it, and I also understand that a lot of people do smoke it to deal with chronic pain, and I know it has been shown to help with that, which is a big thing for the NFL. And if there is a league that would ever lax on it, you would think it would be the NFL, to have them use that as a treatment for pain instead of painkillers, which between the NFL and the WWE is a constant problem. But listen, the rule is the rule, and you have to follow it. And if you can't follow it, you're not going to play. So Josh Gordon needs to understand this and just lay off the stuff for a little while so he can play. But obviously he doesn't care enough where he wants to get back on the field. He would rather do his party time and all that stuff. On the other side, the Johnny Manziel thing is now gone from ridiculous to just straight sad. And we are to blame for it. ESPN is to blame for it. We need to stop covering this kid, he's not a man, and just let him realize that what he's doing is terrible and just going to make him obscure, and nobody's going to care about him if he continues down this path. If we continue to cover him day in and day out, he's going to continue to do it because, hey, look, I'm still on the front cover of all this. ESPN's talking about me every day. He's not going to understand because his brain just works completely different. He's all about the spotlight. So take the spotlight away. You see that with child actors all of the time. So focus more on the help part and less about look at the train wreck over here. Because you know it's now a train wreck when Drew Rosenhaus is getting rid of you. Drew Rosenhaus sees train wrecks and runs to it. This is what he loves. He wants to be in the middle of the train wreck and go, hi, look at me. I'm Drew Rosenhaus. I'm helping this. When he's giving up on you, now you have a serious problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that assessment. And, looking at Manziel, it's kind of funny. I thought about this when Randy was kind of talking about everything that Manziel's going through and the fact that, that people need to lay off him so he can figure out that, hey, I'm not important anymore. That way he'll straighten his life up. I think of the case with the affluenza kid. Money kept him afloat. Every time he turned around, they got him out of trouble. And now it has only led him into a more terrible situation. And so I think you're right on that. Maybe if we can get him out of the spotlight, maybe he'll learn, and maybe he can figure out his life. Maybe he's not a quarterback in the NFL, but maybe he could lead a decent life and not suffer.
Right. Well, speaking of from one quarterback to a team that's probably going to be taking a quarterback, the the Los Angeles Rams. As Jeff Fisher said that Case Keenum was his boy. Well, he lied, because the Rams just pulled off one hell of a trade with the Tennessee Titans, where the Titans would trade their first overall pick, their 4th round pick, and their 6th round pick to the Los Angeles Rams for their 1st round pick, which is the 15th pick, 2 2nd round picks, a 3rd round pick, and then also the 1st and 3rd round picks in 2017. The Titans now have 9 picks in this NFL draft after this. It was believed that the Titans would be taking Tunsil for like the longest time, and then you'd have that tussle between the Browns and whoever else was going to take Goff and Wentz. Now the Rams have moved up. They are proclaiming they have several players that they're looking at. But we know it's one of the quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that they're still toying around and like not committing to somebody makes me worry that this is the biggest mistake in Rams franchise history. If you are giving up this many draft picks and you don't know which one you want yet, you've already failed. I've thought about this trade all day since I heard about it this morning, and I love it for Tennessee. Because, yes, they were going to go for Tunsil, and that was really going to help their offensive line. But now they have 6 picks in the first 76 draft positions this year, on top of another first-round pick next year. They can now solidify so many different pieces that they need and surround Mariota and DeMarco Murray with all of the talent that they can and build towards the future instead of one offensive lineman. If you want to look back at something just like this, you don't have to turn very far. Go back to when the Rams did this and got a bunch of draft picks from the Redskins for Robert Griffin III. They turned all those picks into one hell of a solid team that have always just been 1 or 2 pieces and a quarterback away from a Super Bowl. I mean, they were always that team that you just looked at and you went, well, you don't want to play them, but you don't expect them to go very far. So now they're going out to try to get this quarterback. So to me, they know who they want. They're just not wanting to come out and commit to it. I say, go out and commit to it. Say, Goff is our guy, or not, or why am I blanking on the North Dakota State's name?
Wentz and Lynch.
Wentz, thank you.
Yeah.
Or Wentz is our man. Just say it. Who cares at this point? You've already made your big blockbuster move. You made your big LA move. Go out and say it. And I just love the fact that they had this deal done on Wednesday, but the reason that they waited until Thursday is because they didn't want to take the spotlight from Kobe Bryant. That is so LA.
Yeah, very true. It is LA. Randy, that's what concerns me most about this, is that LA is centered around big news. They were centered around splashes. That's what they want to see, and this is a big splash. This is a good thing for them in the way, but I worry a lot because they're all thinking quarterback. And, Jalen Ramsey already came out and says he is thrilled because he didn't realize the Rams wanted him that bad. He thinks he's going number 1 overall, which is pretty funny, but very confident. I think it is one of these quarterbacks, but what's fearful for me is I don't look at any of these quarterbacks and think Andrew Luck. I don't look at any of these quarterbacks and think Aaron Rodgers. I don't, and that's what makes me fearful for the Rams. I think
remember we've had some people that have talked about their teams and said, "Oh my God, Carson Wentz! Oh my God, Carson Wentz!"
Well, yeah, but that's the way it works. Like I've said this before on this podcast, every year people are going to look at these quarterbacks like they walk on water until they get in the game, and then when they're in game situations, they're realizing, "Oh wait, I didn't realize that he's human." So, I mean, that's all I'm saying is if people are having this much problems, Randy, you already pointed out, if they're having this much trouble figuring out which of these three they want, there's an issue there because that means that nobody's standing out. And that's the quarterback I want to be the franchise. That's the guy that I want to be the face of the team that's brand new to the LA area. That's not there. I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah. What do you think, Randy? I mean,
Well, with all of this, I really think my bigger concern now, because I honestly think the Titans won this trade already. I mean, we'll see how the draft goes here in a few weeks and then how everything kind of pans out over the next few years. Because they're going to be able to fill a whole team. For the Rams, it comes down to whichever quarterback you pick. If he worked out, then this trade was perfect. Because how many times have you looked at a team where they have that star quarterback and then they can make everything else kind of work? So, I mean, if they find their quarterback and it works out and you have him and Gurley and you can work and you can continue to build around those two, then I will say the trade worked for both. But it really comes down to if the quarterback they pick actually works. But the thing that I'm now curious about is now what happens with the Cleveland pick. Because Cleveland went out and got RG3. They were talking about taking a quarterback as well, but you would think with RG3 that's not the biggest priority for them. So now all of a sudden you have teams that were thinking they might take a quarterback. I'm looking at you, San Francisco, who are now going, uh-oh, a quarterback is going before we were thinking. So now if we want the other one, we're going to have to go up into that 2 position, and they're going to probably have to give up just as much, if not more, for that number 2 pick because the position scarcity is going to take effect here. So now if you're the Cleveland Browns, you're holding up that pick going, okay, whoever gives us the most draft picks gets this one. Because they don't need a quarterback. They need to complete their team and actually complete a draft correctly for the first time in franchise history. So if I'm Cleveland, I'm going, all right, who's going to give us 7 picks in the first 76? If you do that, you can have the number 2 pick. Ready,
right,
set,
but Cleveland doesn't. Who is Cleveland going to play at quarterback if they don't get?
They'll play RG3.
I don't think you can have a whole season based on RG3.
But if you have RG3 and you draft a quarterback, who are you going to have around them? That's what I'm saying. You can skip out on a quarterback this year if you say you get the exact same 6 picks as the Titans do. So now you have 6 picks in the first 76 picks this year. So now you can surround the team with good young talent. And if RG3 fails, you have 2 first-round picks next year to go after a quarterback.
You bring up a good point.
Yeah, you look at Cleveland. I look at the Rams kind of the same way. I mean, you build around this team. You put up those pieces that they need because you get a quarterback that's great, but you got to make sure those other pieces are there. So, I mean, I
but
think
Rams have much more pieces than Cleveland at this point.
Oh, defensively, yes, and of course, offensively, they got Gurley, which is great. But offensive line, they could use some help there. Of course, get some other receivers in there. So I just look at that as a business situation. So
I don't see you don't trade up to number 1 for anything but the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just saying the rest of their draft.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I mean that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If they did anything else but that, that'd be really, really shocking at this point. So looking at we go from this crazy trade to something crazy that's happened. It's been a little bit, but there's been new developments in it. The sad passing of Will Smith, the Saints, or former Saints
Former.
defensive lineman. He was shot 8 times by an assailant. I'm not going to mention the guy's name. He don't need any pub. You can find the guy's name in any reports you want. 7 times on the back, 1 in the side, and they all pierced various vital organs and whatever. They have now found 2 extra weapons that has made all this stuff get crazy. They found one in Smith's car, and they found one in, I guess, the guy's car, the assailant's car. They also shot his wife 2 times in each leg, and she's in the hospital right now. Just one of these sad things. Like, that's pretty shitty for somebody to do, and he apparently just did not give a crap, showed no remorse. Any of this, just I don't know how the attorney can say, "Oh, he's been prejudged." BS.
Yeah, I don't get it. And speaking of prejudging, I will come out and write out and say, I obviously I don't know much of the personal life of Will Smith. I knew he was a good defensive player for the Saints for years, but I mean, I have learned much more since, as you hear all the stories and how he's really been helping the New Orleans community and stuff. But I will be the first one to come out and say that I was working that Saturday night and we were closing up. It was about 1:30 in the morning, our time, when the report came across ESPN, breaking news, Will Smith shot. And I will admit, the first thing I thought of was, okay, what drunk craziness did this guy get into? Because that's just kind of the sad stories we hear about sports figures these days. And then to come to find out that it was over some road rage incident and just completely whatever kind of argument led to this guy going completely ballistic and firing on Will Smith. I guess there's reports of Will saying that he was going to go get his gun or something, and that's why the guy went ballistic and fired on him, which is still not to say that the guy was out of the wrong by any means, but just the fact that this wasn't Will Smith going out and doing something stupid. It was just one of those things that happens, and then those crazy things where people threaten all the time, but this was one of those times where the threat was real. It's tough to talk about.
It really is. And, people immediately say, well, you guys, in public in general, kind of defends Will Smith on this. And I can understand, he's a football player, people know his name, so they're going to be like, oh, that guy wouldn't do anything bad. But, I'm sure he's not completely innocent on this. I'm not saying that he deserved it for sure. That's not true at all. I'm just saying I'm sure he said a few things that maybe, kept the situation heated. But this guy definitely, he went to the extreme. You don't shoot somebody that many times and hit somebody else multiple times without having some intent. I'm just saying that. You don't have that good of accuracy and not be scared to death. Because trust me, if I'm scared and I'm shooting, I'm probably shooting wild, to be honest with you. If I'm afraid someone's going to get a gun and I have one, I guarantee you I'm not going to be in perfect aim because I'm going to be terrified for my life. And I think, most people who are in military or in the police service could tell you that. They have to have training just to keep calm themselves, and they're professionals. So I'm just saying this, that it's a sad situation. Road rage is becoming more and more of an issue because we're hearing of people dying more and more because of it. You thought texting and driving was dangerous. Man, road rage is getting just as dangerous.
Yeah,
so,
and I hate to bring it up, and it's one of those things that we don't really need to get into here. This is a sports podcast. We don't need to go into the political BS stuff, but it always makes you wonder. I mean, I'm all for Second Amendment rights. I'm not going to sit here and say that you should not be able to have a gun and stuff, but it just shows you that, I mean, if we were in a society which would, it's tough to get to that point now from where we are, but if we were in a society where no guns, you got to think Will Smith is still alive, because the worst that's going to happen is they're going to have a fist fight. And, if more people had guns, which I live up here in the Northwest, and Idaho is passing laws right now which will allow people to carry guns a lot easier on their person. The whole conceal and carry permits and stuff are becoming a lot looser as far as restrictions and all of that. It's now all these road rage situations or big arguments that you have in stores, now they have a gun, and how that could escalate. I mean, one big argument could turn into a death a lot easier that way, and it's scary to me. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that all guns need to go away, because that's not the answer either. But, yeah.
It's tough, and you're right. I mean, there's no reason to get too political. This is not that kind of podcast. But Randy, you bring up a good point, and I just want to throw this out there. If you're listening to this and you're, thinking about situations you've been in, it's not worth it to get into a road rage. I mean, sure, you can get ticked off at somebody, but don't incite a fight. Just, hey, let the person go on. Let them be crazy somewhere else. Don't die because you get mad someone cut you off and you want to prove a point. Just move on with your day. You'll be okay.
Yeah. This is one of those things that's so weird. Like, for me, I know when I'm driving, sometimes I get mad at these people, but I'm not the type that gets mad in my own car. I would never think about, like, putting down my window and deciding that I'm just going to yell with the person next to me or whatever, But the problem is some people can't just do that. You honk the horn at them and they act like, you just did some terrible thing to them or something. So it's just, you never know, you piss off the wrong person and it leads to something that should never happen. And it's sad, this is really sad what happened to Will Smith. I mean, I guess it should teach you to be careful, when you're on those roads and you're really mad about that person that almost cut you off. Just, think about, I guess, the escalation that could happen there, sadly. But we do have to move on from this to, I guess, to Berkshire Ferguson. After being asked to take a pay cut, instead of doing that, he decides to retire.
Yeah, he took a permanent pay cut instead, which is sad. I'm a big fan of Ferguson. He's been a huge part of the offensive line, which has been solid for the Jets for years. So, I mean, and that you're going to see that so much more in the NFL with all of the concussion stuff and all of the...
Yeah, didn't some role player or whatever for one of the teams, I can't remember who exactly, but he retired at 23. I mean...
And you're going to see that a lot. They're going to go in, they're going to get their money, and when it comes down to a big situation, they're going to go, meh, it's not worth it anymore, which is not good for the NFL. Hopefully they can figure how to rein that in a little bit. But listen, the Jets don't have the salary cap, and they needed some salary cap if they wanted any chance of signing Fitzpatrick. So they went to Ferguson and said, hey, can we restructure your deal so we can fit Fitzpatrick in and really make a run of stuff? And Ferguson thought about it and went, as much as I love this team and stuff, to take less money to risk my health even more is not worth it. So I'm just going to ride off in the sunset and take my money and go home. And as a fan, I'm disappointed because I really felt like the Jets were building a pretty decent nucleus, and now to lose Ferguson like this is going to hurt the team. But I can't blame Ferguson at all. I mean, absolutely. Take the money you've made and move on and enjoy the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, this is a situation that a lot of teams are going to probably deal with, like Brandy said. I mean, guys are going to think about their future as health-wise, not only financially, and a lot of these guys have made their money already. And so they're thinking to themselves, well, I mean, I got this much in the bank. Hey, I could open up 2 or 3 businesses with this and not have to put my body through this, and, I'd have less stress. So I think that's a situation that's going to be a big issue in the future. And you do feel for the Jets because, they were going to this the right way. Teams do this every year. And just a situation now that, they've done something about it, but they wanted to go about this another way.
Yeah, for sure. But Berkshire Ferguson's not the only one. Percy Harvin retired today. So, I mean, I think this one was pretty expected. We kind of he'd already kind of mentioned thinking about this. He's had the migraine problems for a long time now. Probably better for him, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just one of those stories where he has all the talent in the world, but injuries just kind of hold him back from having an even better career. I mean, he was a decent player in the NFL and was a great role player. But if he could have got through, figured out the migraine situation and really been able to put his all into multiple seasons and not have to take games off and practices off and all of that, I really thought he could have stepped things up. And it's interesting. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but ESPN just had their 30 for 30 on the Orlando Magic and remembering the days of Penny Hardaway and the same kind of thing there where he was supposed to be this elite player, but injuries really hampered him completely to just an okay player, and I think that's kind of what happened with Percy.
Yeah, I remember Penny Hardaway when I was young, or younger, sorry. He was on a lot of things, commercials and whatever, and I remember thinking he was awesome. I think he was like one of the first guys to be on the Sprite deal.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, having that time with Shaq and everything, and just I thought he was going to be this heck of a player, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, what happened to you, man? And then you find out he got injured all the time. And same thing with Percy Harvin. I mean, he had all this promise. You thought he was going to be that guy that was going to be able to run out of the backfield and catch passes and do all this, and then you find out about the migraine thing, and it just kind of, that first time he ever got him where it really kind of put him out of a game, after that, he was never the same guy again. So, anything you want to say, Gary? Or
No, you guys pretty much said it all, and Percy Harvin was good for what he was used for, and that's a return guy, and did a few good things. But I mean, this is a loss in a way for the Bills, but I don't think it was a huge loss.
Well, because of that retirement, you're saying that the Jets went and got Ryan Clady for that reason. What do you think, Randy?
If he can stay healthy, it's a good pickup. They gave up a 5th-round pick for him. Ryan Clady's a very good offensive lineman. He's played for the Denver Broncos. But the thing that really scares me is you go from Ferguson, who was always there, rarely missed games, if ever, to Ryan Clady, who in the last 3 seasons has missed a total of 30 games.
Oof.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go pretty quick with these because we got to get to that schedule release discussion. The Redskins signed Greg Toller for defense, and they signed Vernon Davis, so they're going to have a nice tandem of Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis at tight end. What do you think, Gary?
Hey, this is good news for Kirk Cousins. Not only do he has some great receivers on the outside. I think that this is really going to add to their arsenal. If they can find a way to make sure that their running game keeps going, having those tight ends on this team is going to help that offense immensely. So I think Vernon Davis is definitely a good fit for the Redskins.
Vernon Davis would be a good pickup if he remembered how to play football.
Yeah, I think that maybe they're not thinking just offensively when it comes to catch pass. I think they're also looking at blocking too. I mean, he was a pretty good, decent blocker.
Yeah, true. On that end, he does need to kind of get back in the flow of the game, and let's see, Greg Toller's a pretty decent pickup defensively too for the Redskins. Kiko Alonso goes to the Dolphins. We know he's got the injury problems, but gonna go to a nice defense there.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. Same thing. If he can stay healthy, that's a very big pickup for the Dolphins.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
A former Dolphin goes to the Giants in Kelvin Shepherd. Pretty veteran linebacker, knows what he's doing. Should provide a good fit for the Giants. And LeGarrette Blount stays with the Patriots again. Year, $2 million. So
it's home for him now.
Until Belichick and Tom Brady leave the Patriots, I will not care about any running back for the Patriots because they don't.
Yeah, they don't. But I'll say this: LeGarrette Blount has done them a lot of good, and they've done him a lot of good.
True that on both ends. So, all right, let's get into the big deal of today. What's going to be this week is this 2016 schedule release. Randy, let's hit it with your Jets first. What do you think?
Before I get to the terribleness of the Jets schedule, I just love the fact that the NFL could go, okay, we're coming out with a bunch of pieces of paper with a schedule on it, which you guys already know who everyone's playing. But
it's just the order now.
Now here's the order, and we get specials on all of these different sports networks where they break down.
Yeah, and they go 3 hours breaking down. It's like,
I love
wow.
It just shows you the NFL. And here we are talking about it. But as a Jets fan, when I first looked at it, because I was at work when this got released, and I looked and went, well, Jets have 6 road games in the first 9 games, which means the back end of the schedule will be very home-friendly. So if the record is okay somehow through the road games, then they could do better in the second half, and hunky-dory, we could finish strong and maybe make the playoffs. And then I looked, and the NFL did no favors as you host the Bengals, playoff team. You go straight into a Thursday night game on the road against Buffalo, who swept you. And then you go road game against Kansas City, Arrowhead, sucks to play in, playoff game, or playoff team. Then you host the Seahawks, playoff team. And then you go to Pittsburgh, playoff team. And then you go to Arizona, playoff team. 5 of your first 6 games are against playoff teams. 4 of them on the road. Just, I could definitely see a 1-5 start in my future and a head pounding against the wall. And it would be even worse if we're without Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Oof. That,
yeah,
that doesn't sound too great. I mean, look, these kind of things always happen. You get upset. You say, okay, I'm worried about my team doing this and all that. And, it winds up turning out better than you expect. So, I mean, Gary, for us and the Cowboys, and we start with the Giants, as that's pretty much has become the custom at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Then you play another divisional team in the Redskins. Then we go out of the division finally to play the Bears on the first on a Sunday night game. What are we doing after that? Then they play the 49ers. So I'm gonna guess we got the NFC. Yeah, we do have the NFC West because that was the big deal about who was going to play in London or whatever. The Bengals in week 5 at home, actually. And then the Packers. So those first 6 games, not what you would say totally nice or anything.
No, I mean, all these teams are fairly good teams, and you got the Bengals, who are going to be a very tough team to play. You don't care if you play them at home or not. Chicago, they always give Dallas a tough time, especially in prime time, which they'll be playing prime time. So, I mean, those are a few games I look at and have, some concerns. Green Bay's on this schedule. As the schedule goes on, you get the Redskins on Thanksgiving Day. You're playing the Minnesota Vikings, who, hey, I mean, they can be even better than they were last year, and so that's
Vikings
big
on
game.
a Thursday night.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, overall, the Cowboys have a schedule that, I mean, it may be at this point looking like they can, do some damage, but on the other hand, this never works out the way you expect. I think a lot of the teams they'll be playing on this schedule are going to be good teams. They're going to be contenders. And so this is not a cakewalk at all.
Oh, certainly not. I mean, you'll get some of the bad teams, but, like we get to play the Browns and stuff, but then you have to play the Steelers the week after. So it's not like, it's like you said,
Ravens. The NFC North is nothing to play with, baby. I mean, they are tough teams to play. We talk about them all the time on this podcast. And, look at the Dallas Cowboys. Usually ends up coming close to the end of the year, and they got to play the Eagles last. And if the draft doesn't work out the way the Cowboys need it to work out, the Eagles may be, making sure that last game is the final nail in the coffin for the Cowboys.
Yeah, it always winds up that way, right? You're playing the Eagles, and you think it's going to be it always winds up being that tough game. It seems like the Eagles are that team you don't want to play. I mean, they get a little bit of a break on the week 15 with the Bucks or whatever. You'd think they do, but again, the Bucks looked really good last year. I mean, we get to play the Lions on Monday night, the day after Christmas. So there will be Christmas games on this, because Christmas falls on a Sunday. Broncos and Chiefs and Ravens and Steelers. So divisional games on Christmas.
Let's just put two major rivals on
Yeah.
Christmas Day.
Well, and then all the other games are going to be Christmas Eve. So
I just love it. And it's going to be interesting to see kind of what the NBA does when they come out with their schedule as far as on Christmas, because Christmas is usually the basketball holiday. So now that they have some competition, kind of what they're going to throw at, I would not be surprised to see like a Spurs Warriors and stuff. So Christmas, I'm sorry, family. We got football and basketball to watch. So
yep. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, we'll open up gifts at 5 a.m. Then after that, I'm gone. But this is going to be a really interesting schedule, because there's lots of big games, lots of national games here that are going to be really
both of our teams big time on the national schedule. 5 for the Jets and 6 for the Cowboys. So we'll be seeing both of our teams a lot, even though, Gary gets to watch them all the time, but, Randy and I have to deal with the whole, we may not be able to be in a position where, they're showing them there on the local. So,
what do you think about the, go ahead.
I was just going to say a few notes that I've noticed on here. What do you guys think? We have 2 teams that their bye week is not until week 13.
That's ridiculous.
This year. There's nobody that has a bye week 12 because of Thanksgiving and such. But the Browns and Titans do not have their bye week this year until week 13.
That sucks for fantasy as well.
It really does. That's the last week usually for regular season in fantasy football.
Oh, you should not be having to deal with bye weeks.
No.
That week. I mean, the Browns, who the hell are you going to have on from their team? But
RG3, all the way.
I guess. If you have Mariota or, whoever they might have some of their receivers.
Duke Johnson.
DeMarco Murray.
DeMarco Murray. That could affect you. That's certainly, the bane of Randy's existence is Thursday night schedule. which now gets more interesting with the NBC and CBS having the split of the first 10 games. And also Twitter is now going to live stream 10 Thursday night games, which helps me because I don't plan on having cable when these NFL games are going on. So
yeah, and just by the way, the bane of my existence, these stupid Thursday night games, which are just abysmal to watch. How the hell do the Jets get 2 of them?
they were not a bit last year. They were actually pretty good. What are you talking about?
Well, they get better because they're divisional matchups. So the rivalries are there.
I mean, how many times did we talk about them going to overtime or almost going to overtime?
I'm not saying that they're not close games, but they're not good, man. Because you just cannot prepare for these like you can a regular week. The level of competition from a Thursday game to a Sunday game are completely different. Yes, because their division, I think that actually will help a little bit because you already have the book on these teams, and they did improve last year.
And they seem to have a lot more not divisional games this year.
So I mean, they're gonna lose me there. But of course, I don't like Thursday night games, and the Jets get 2 of them.
Yeah, so let's look at this. The first week officially of Thursday night is the Jets and Bills.
Yeah.
So if they do the color rush again, at least it'll be way before Christmas this time. The Texans against the Patriots. Dolphins against the Bengals, so 2 non-divisional ones right there. Cardinals and 49ers. Broncos and Chargers, that always seems to be a matchup. The Bears and Packers. Jaguars and Titans again. Falcons, Buccaneers. Browns, Ravens. Saints and Panthers. Cowboys and Vikings, non-divisional there. Raiders and Chiefs. Rams and Seahawks. Dolphins and Jets. That's Saturday.
That's a Saturday game, man.
And then, so you have the Saturday game again.
Yeah,
and then the Giants and Eagles, and then the Saturday Bengals and Texans, also non-divisional. So there you go. It seems like your usual Thursday night matchups, a lot of them.
Yeah, it does, and I still think they're going to be very entertaining. Some of them may not be as good as we want, but I think they'll be entertaining. And I know we're probably going to move on from the schedule, but the one thing I do want to make sure we point out, and I'm kind of curious what you guys think about this, is the first game of the year, the kickoff matchup is going to be, of course, the replay of the Super Bowl with the Carolina Panthers facing off against the Denver Broncos, and
excited.
Wow.
That's how you kick things off.
Against
I'll tell you right now, I am taking all bets. Carolina's winning that game.
Oh yeah, most of the time the revenge is so sweet at that point.
Taking all bets, but we got a long ways to go before we hit week 1 and all that. We have things to talk about. I got 2 things I got to ask you guys real quick before we move on. One about week 1 and one about another team that just completely got hosed a little bit. Let's talk about the team that got hosed first. The Miami Dolphins. I mean, I love the fact that it happened to them. But can you start with a worse schedule than they did, where you have to travel across country and face the Seattle Seahawks week 1 in Seattle, and then the very next week go to Foxborough to play the Patriots?
Oof. Nasty.
Can you have a worse start to a season?
Wow. No, that is not something
the
I would be
Steelers,
looking
I think,
for.
also open up with games against multiple playoff teams, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me load that up real quick. But the other game I'm looking at, they're at Washington and then home against the Bengals. So yeah, 2 playoff teams, but one's at home.
The Redskins and Packers also have 3-game road trips, so that.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. There's a lot of teams I saw that had 4 straight home games with the bye week in between and stuff. So they really mixed around. They didn't split up home and away as much as they used to, I think. But there's just another matchup I want to point out in week 1 that I'm super excited about. Obviously, the first game between the Panthers and Broncos is going to be the marquee one. But Gary, fantasy-wise, you kind of start looking at matchups and stuff. And the game I'll be watching, and if you're a gambler, you're betting the over on this game. But week 1, you have the Green Bay Packers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a fantasy dream matchup right there.
Oh, yeah, it
It's
is.
the first team to 60 wins that game. And I'll watch every snap of that game.
No, that'll be a blast. It really will be. And, you hope those Jaguars bring that same spark that they had last year on offense. It is going to be a barn burner. And I'm thrilled for it. Yeah, and you definitely are going to have plenty of people in that game in your fantasy lineup. So I'm looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, I mean, you got Patriots and Cardinals on that Sunday night game. I mean, that's going to be pretty awesome. And then you got the doubleheader on Monday night, which Redskins playing on that first Monday night game, Gary. So.
Yeah. So you'll get a front seat look at what they're going to be doing this year.
Yeah. And then the Rams will play in the second one, so we'll get to see them front and center on that first Monday night game, and right before we do that first podcast, and get to, or second one, I guess, since we would do one for that opening game. But yeah, I mean, getting to see what the Rams are made of with whoever the heck is quarterback at that point.
We'll say Goff. We'll just go with Goff.
We'll just go with that. And if Kaepernick and Chip Kelly, if they're on the same beat at that point. But I mean, look, there's a reason why they have 3-hour specials for this thing. We don't have 3 hours to talk about everybody's schedule and try to forecast who's going to win what. That's kind of so silly when we haven't even had the draft yet. We just kind of wanted to talk about our teams, talk about some of the national things and whatever. And we didn't even get into the Monday and Sunday night. But I mean, look, we got weeks before even the draft starts. So maybe Thursday Monday we'll talk about it some more, whatever. But we should get into these teams here. Of course, it's much easier now to kind of talk about them in a sort of post-free agency kind of thing leading up to the draft. And I want to thank, I don't know if he ever listens to this or not, but I want to thank Mr. Rick Balon, who Gary and I had a chance to go to In-N-Out Burger and eat with him while we were over there in Texas. And he hooked us up with a cool guy who used to do radio for the San Francisco 49ers during the entire Alex Smith era, and then now does radio for the Saints in Louisiana, where he lives now, named Chet Yoder. He is the one that did the interview with us here for the San Francisco 49ers, and I apologize, but he's also a big wrestling fan, and he was in Dallas for Wrestlemania, so the first 3 or 4 minutes is him and I talking about NFC TakeOver or whatever, but we do get into plenty talk about the San Francisco 49ers as well. So here you go, Chet Yoder talking about the 49ers. All right, recording the first interview for the podcast today, and this is a great honor for us. We actually have a person that actually does radio for a city and a station, 103.7 The Game in New Orleans and in Louisiana there. But the reason why we have him on is because he's a 49ers fan, and he actually worked at radio stations in San Francisco for about 6 years from 2004 to 2010. So he has the experience of not only being a fan, but covering the team, daily and everything else. I want to welcome Chet Yoder to the podcast and to everybody. How are you doing today, Chet?
Dude, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing okay. Got back from a trip to Texas for WrestleMania, got married and all that stuff, and now just
there you go. I went to WrestleMania myself.
Oh, you did? Awesome.
Went to did the WrestleMania, did the NXT Takeover, it was Access. I did it all.
What did you enjoy most?
NXT Takeover Dallas. Oh, I mean, I am an NXT guy. I enjoyed watching Shinsuke Nakamura and Sami Zayn, and a big Finn Balor fan. WrestleMania for me was just I don't know, dull. It didn't hit any buttons for me. I knew Stone Cold was coming out. I was a little disappointed with just the whole overall production of WrestleMania.
Right.
I enjoyed the atmosphere at AT&T Stadium. Sure, it's 100,000, but NXT TakeOver was my biggest takeaway. It was a tight-knit crowd. I got second row on the floor seats, so it was just a lot of fun to be part of something so pure and independent feel, you know?
Oh, it was certainly insane, the crowd there and everything.
Yeah. But I enjoyed myself for the whole weekend. You had access to, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we did the TakeOver and WrestleMania thing. Gary and I, who is one of my co-hosts here on the podcast, but yeah, it's we actually have a wrestling podcast too. So if you ever want to talk wrestling, just let us know.
I can throw it down. I'm a big wrestling aficionado, and I'm all about NXT right now. But obviously, I watch WWE. I watch the MPJW. I grew up watching WCW, ECW, WWF when it was WWF, and then Mid-South. I do it all. I have the network, so I'm a geek just like y'all.
Yeah, we cover everything. So New Japan, WWE, TNA, ROH, all that stuff.
Yeah,
so
TNA,
whatever you feel like talking about, we're good to go on
Absolutely,
that. So.
absolutely.
But yeah, so now that we've alienated for the football people for 30 minutes,
Yeah.
But so how long have you been a 49ers fan?
Well, my mom and dad grew up 49ers fans when they moved to this country back in 1976. I was born in the 80s, so I was born a 49ers fan, and so I kind of got a string of all those Super Bowls in the late 80s into the 90s, and, well, they haven't seen one since. But I've been a 49ers fan since I was born, so about 1984. Wow. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And then to cover the team as well, it was fun, stressful. Some of the, I guess you could say, lowly years of the 49ers program. But it's been a lot of fun, and there's a lot of question marks surrounding this year's team. So.
Yeah, and one of those is what they're going to do at quarterback. At one point there was supposed to be a trade going through the Broncos.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. Colin Kaepernick is still there. He did not have the greatest of years last year. What do you think with him? Can Chip Kelly resurrect the old Colin Kaepernick, or is this kind of what he is?
He can. With Colin Kaepernick, he had surgeries last year. He had an injured shoulder, injured knee. It was just basically take your pick. He was hurt up and down. And then he got benched in favor of Blaine Gabbert, and it was just kind of a difficult situation where the agent told him, hey, we need to explore a trade. There was almost a trade that was going to send him to Denver. There was a trade before that was going to send him to Cleveland, which Johnny Manziel was going to be involved in that trade. That one got negated. I'm a little surprised where they're kind of going with Kaepernick, because I felt like he was the best option for Chip Kelly's spread offense. I mean, this Chip Kelly needs a guy that can do dual, like a dual threat quarterback, and Kaepernick can do both. I think this is kind of the best situation possible for Chip Kelly and Colin Kaepernick to try to make it work here in San Francisco, because right now the 49ers offense is very bad. It's boring, it's dull, it doesn't score enough points. It was one of the league's worst last year. They just need to be more exciting offensively. Wins are a bonus for San Francisco right now. I hate to say it.
Yeah, I mean, the team certainly sort of improved when Gabbert came in.
Mm-hmm. They did.
They also had to deal with a lot of sort of having the backups in there because Carlos Hyde was hurt, and Sean Drawn kind of did his thing, and
Oh man, you mentioned those names, Sean. It gets nauseating because it's just, and Anquan Bolden was, he was kind of disgruntled, and Torrey Smith just wasn't utilized enough, and Reggie Bush just wasn't there. He got hurt, and it just felt like one of those years where nothing was supposed to go right, and Jim Tomsula lost his job because of it.
Well, we've seen Chip Kelly now with the Eagles. He didn't have the greatest of years. He had a similar situation with having a Sam Bradford. He got hurt for a little while, had to put in Mark Sanchez, and then the team just didn't want him after a while. All the issues that he caused there. He comes to the 49ers. He brings his offense. Do you think that this is going to help the team? What do you think of Chip Kelly?
When they initially hired him, I was a little surprised, to be honest, because I thought Chip Kelly was going to go back down to the college ranks or stay in Philadelphia. Now, we know the Philadelphia situation got stale. I think Chip Kelly's going to bring in some excitement to this 49ers offense. If he can work with Colin Kaepernick, they have young wide receiving talent. They have Carlos Hyde, who's going to be healthy this upcoming season. Kendall Hunter, they're going to try to work out a good running attack. They need to get another wide receiver. They were going to get actually Josh Gordon from Cleveland a couple of days ago, and the trade back basically fell through last minute again. Another trade proposal to the Browns. I'm a little weary of that.
And then he fails the test, so it's probably a better thing.
Right. So it didn't really pan out. But I think that Chip Kelly's probably the best hire as far as getting this offense going, because the defense is pretty good. They got most of the parts back. They're probably going to get a defensive guy in the draft, but just to kind of improve it even that much more. But I think that Chip Kelly provides the leadership qualities that you need. He had success with Philadelphia. He's not a wow over-the-top coach, but he's a guy that's still coming up, learning his way, and I think it might be a perfect situation with the 49ers.
And you talk about learning. One of the things that he seemingly did with this team which was the biggest problem with the Eagles, instead of going and trying to find a bunch of guys that he likes, he basically re-signed everybody. Do you like that? Instead of,
I do.
Do you think they could have done more?
I'm curious to see what they do offensively in the NFL draft, if they do anything at all. And I would like them to add maybe a wide receiver, maybe a running back. They got to get some offensive line help for Kaepernick. You need protection because it was bad last year. He had a vision. He wanted to keep what he wanted to keep. I think he didn't want to work as hard as maybe he did in Philadelphia and blow kind of some of it up. And there were a lot of things that got blown in proportion with Chip Kelly and what he was doing in Philadelphia. And there was racist angles, and it got nasty to the point where it was like, does this guy like black players? And when you get to that kind of conversation, it's tough, because I don't think that was the case. I just think that he had a vision with Philadelphia, and it just didn't pan out. And maybe he didn't want to do the same thing here in San Francisco. And frankly, I don't think he needed to, because he had the talent here in San Francisco. And I think deep down he knows he does, and he can work, try to do some wonders with his offenses. But it's going to take some time. Don't expect any kind of glorious season next season. I hope for the best out of the 49ers, but I think you're realistically thinking 5-6 wins, maybe 7 next year would be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers that you mentioned, they're pretty good defense. I mean, I think they led the league or they were pretty high in the league in turnovers, and both their secondary was pretty good last year. Both of their corners had a large amount of interceptions. You had, I think Aaron Lynch was coming around sacking people. I mean, so you have pieces there, obviously. Do you think the defense can handle what Chip Kelly's offense does, which is basically they hurry up and get off the field offense?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's not the pedigree for any defense. They need the breather on those sidelines. So I think they're not obviously maybe down with the quick strike scores, but if you're able to put points up, guys like Navarro Bowman, like you said, Lynch, and the rest of this defensive unit, I believe they're going to be happy playing with a lead, if that's the case. I don't know if it's all going to kind of come together next season, but they're going to get some pieces in the NFL draft, and I can't wait for the draft. I'm excited just probably as much as anybody. I hope you are as well, especially with the latest trade that happened this morning. I think they're going to look pretty good in adding a big defensive piece in that first round, and I think they're going to look even better defensively than I guess a lot of people give them credit for.
Well, I mean, this is in your division. You know, you have to deal with what happened here. The Titans trade out of the number 1 spot to a team in your division in the Los Angeles Rams. What do you think about all this moving, about getting about, well, it felt like 6 picks or whatever it was?
I know. The Rams they're going for it. That's basically the main thing that I took out of this, and Coach Fisher wanted to make it. He said he wasn't going to make much changes on the quarterback range, but now, I mean, you got Nick Foles and Case Keenum and what is that, Sean Mannion? I mean, it just wasn't going to work. Now, with this number 1 pick, they're either going to get Jared Goff from Cal or Carson Wentz from North Dakota State, which is fine because for the 49ers, that opens the door up to try to get some awesome defensive prospects, and right now, cornerback Jalen Ramsey from Florida State's going to be there, defensive end Joey Bosa from Ohio State, defensive end DeForest Buckner from Oregon's going to be available, and then linebacker Miles Jacks from UCLA, who the Niners have been really high on, who could kind of fill that void in that linebacking unit with Navarro Bowman. Would be awesome. I mean, those 4 right there are going to kind of be okay. I mean, going to be actually superb picks for the 49ers. And so I don't think the number 1 pick from the Rams, whoever they get, you know, Goff or Wentz, is really going to affect San Francisco's plans in this draft.
So is there a certain player or a certain position you want to see them take with that number 7 pick?
If you ask me right now, I like cornerback Jalen Ramsey because he's just a top-flight shutdown cornerback. Obviously, most people consider him a safety, and he could be a difference maker in the Niners' pass defense, which struggled at times last year, but it was on the field a lot last year. But out of those 4 I mentioned, I mean, I'll take any of those guys. You know, the Niners could beef up their line and get a guy like Joey Bosa from Ohio State or DeForest Buckner from Oregon, and then your linebacking unit could get even better because you got one of the best in the business with Navarro Bowman, and you improve that with Miles Jack from UCLA. I mean, I think it's a win-win situation. A lot of people were asking me if the 49ers were going to get a quarterback, and I thought maybe they would, you know, suck as best they could for Jared Goff, but that's not quite in their plans, and obviously it's in the Rams' vision. And I don't know if drafting a quarterback first round is the smartest move. It's a very desperate move for the 49ers, and I think if they're going to keep Kaepernick, I think you might as well try to build with him and get a quarterback maybe somewhere in the 4th or 5th round, you know, and go from there. First-round quarterbacks for me, they just don't sit well with me, Sean. But, you know, for the most part. But I think this is a good situation for the 49ers.
I mean, there's certainly ones in later rounds that they could go after if they wanted to.
Right.
You know, even a Dak Prescott to sort of fill that role that Kaepernick's doing right now.
Yeah. I'm a big Dak Prescott fan. I covered the SEC for the last couple of years. I met Dak, great guy, and what he's doing in Starkville, of all places, has been amazing, you know, for Mississippi State. Yeah, there's a lot of guys I can think about. That's not my pressing need as far as looking at this year's draft. I want to get 2 or 3 pieces defensively. I might want to get a wide receiver and then also get a quarterback at that. And I think the 49ers will kind of like what they get. Well, hopefully they'll make the right picks and the right times and work from there, because they can't be expecting any kind of playoff berth next year. It's just not going to happen. I hope so, but it probably won't.
Yeah, I mean, you could always the surprise could always happen, but
sure,
better
Harbaugh
to always
did it
have
in his
that
first
realistic
year.
thought. Right.
Harbaugh did it in his first year. I was not expecting an NFC Championship berth. I actually got a chance to cover the team a little bit that year as well, which was great, because covering 6 years of Alex Smith doing absolutely positively nothing, and that's not him. That's not all on him, because he had 7 different offensive coordinators. But to see Jim Harbaugh do that in his first year, I would not put it past Chip Kelly to do it. I'm just saying the expectations there are very low.
So with Carl, talking about Carlos Hyde for a second.
Yeah.
The Chip Kelly, we know he has problems last year with DeMarco Murray. Sort of similar guy in that he seems to run north and south much better. Do you think that Chip Kelly is going to sort of recognize the error of his ways and maybe change a little bit about what he does with the running back and go to his strengths?
Well, the thing is, with the situation we just talked about, as far as him re-signing a lot of the 49er players and bringing them back, would lead me to believe that he has learned from his situation with DeMarco Murray that ended so sourly, and maybe it was the both of them just not meshing. Carlos Hyde has one of those personalities that is similar to DeMarco. Like any other running back, he wants the ball. He's a very testy player. He's very passionate, and I feel like those two, if they got on the same page right when Chip Kelly arrived, I think they'll be fine. And I think Chip Kelly has learned from his ways, and I think he won't say that, but his actions will speak louder than any words that he would say, and he wouldn't say anything. So I think it's going to be okay. I think they'll be okay. Like I said, I'm just looking for a more exciting offense, and Carlos Hyde's got that, up the field power back, and he runs real fast, and he's got a good boost upfield, and I think his growth is going to be very, very important, and I think Chip Kelly's only going to help him and not hurt him.
So looking now ahead to, let's say you're in training camp, the draft is over, all this stuff. You would say it was a successful offseason because what happened?
Oh, boy. It was a successful offseason because the 49ers made the right hire with Chip Kelly. They were able to resolve, and I say that hopefully, the Colin Kaepernick situation. They were able to add amount of pieces defensively. I think their off-season was one of the worst last year because of all the sudden retirements and the people who had to quit and guys were leaving the team, and everything kind of blew up in their faces. I think it could only be that much better this offseason. I don't think it's going to be the greatest offseason for the 49ers, but I don't think it was a bad one either. I think it was probably about a good.
Second. Hold on.
All right, yeah, and like I said, I think overall it's going to be a pretty good off season. Nothing great, but nothing bad. I think that if they have their pieces in line, Chip Kelly's the biggest hire they could have made this off season. I think that's what's going to propel them to where they want to be at years down the road.
All right, Chet, I think you answered all of our questions here.
Cool.
This was great. Thank you so much for helping out. And it may not be a team-specific one. We might do one on the divisions themselves after the draft. And I'll keep in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. You have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, that was Chet Yoder talking about his 49ers. Well, I mean, guys, I think he kind of hit on all the points there about the team. I mean, Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, the thing that really stood out to me was just the fact that he kind of looks at the 49ers the way that I was looking at Cleveland, whereas we have an okay quarterback, so we don't need to go after one in the draft. We talked about it earlier, where I really think that that's what they're looking to do is maybe trade up and get Goff or Wentz. But I'm kind of with him. I mean, keep your draft picks, solidify some of your other positions, and see what you can do with Kaepernick or Gabbert, and go from there. I mean, see if something clicks with Chip Kelly first. So I see his point. I mean, it's different from where I was thinking that the 49ers might go, but I can see where he's looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, he pointed out there's so many players that now, with this big trade happening, some of these really good quality players that were supposed to maybe not make it past 5 or 6 are finally going to fall in their lap where they're right at 7. And, it's just kind of weird to think about, but it's totally possible that a Jalen Ramsey falls that far. It's totally possible that even a Miles Jack with a knee issue falls that far down to the 49ers, whereas in the scenarios that maybe earlier in these mock drafts before this trade, we're seeing those guys go earlier than that. So I think they're in a good position right now. I think that they feel like that, and he points that out there. And heck, even if the scenario doesn't work out, the worst they could do is get the best defensive end in this draft. And so it's all points to positive things for the 49ers here. And, he also points out a few things about the 49ers offense, like, Carlos Hyde. If him and Chip Kelly can get on the same page, success is right around the corner. And I'm truly a believer in that as well. Carlos Hyde's a great young player as long as this system works for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Chip Kelly figures out that, look, you can't force a guy that goes forward to goes laterally constantly and take him out of his element, I think, the only team that he's definitely going to win in this spot. I think it's going to be a lot of the teams going to hinge on if Kaepernick's going to be in a mode to actually try to work with Chip Kelly and actually focus on making the team better and not just kind of trying to coast through the season. Because, look, you've got to actually have a good season to try to sell yourself to other teams if you decide, I don't want to be here anymore, or the team decides that, hey, we don't want you anymore or whatever. So I think there will be motivation. Just you always got to wonder if, those things are there for them. And their defense was a lot better than I thought they were going to be after all the retirements and everything. Imagine adding some pieces, as Chet said, to that and making it even better. And maybe you do find that wide receiver that you can sort of count on. You've got a few there already. Could Kaepernick finally find that, work with Torrey Smith and work with Anquan Bolden, and then you maybe have that third guy you can depend on there. I mean, they have pieces, certainly. Can Chip Kelly figure out how to use them right, and can the defense withstand the way that the offense plays under Chip Kelly?
Yeah, and the one thing that we have to remember with this whole Chip Kelly situation is he went into Philadelphia with all the pressure in the world because everyone's going, will his system work in the NFL, and really just broke down everything that he did. Now he goes to San Francisco and everyone's like, Chip Kelly's system doesn't work, whatever. San Francisco's a bad team. They're in a tough division. So all the pressure is now completely off of them. And as he said, they don't have any expectations of going to the playoffs this year. So as long as they can remember that, and really use this year as a trial and error system and go out in the draft and get some really good players and just mix and match and try some different things and look towards the future, I think the future is pretty bright for the 49ers.
What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, I think so as well. And, right now they're in a good position with a coach coming in and putting in his system in because of the fact they actually do have some pieces that could fit his system. He's here with a team that, honestly, making the turnovers on the roster are not going to be that difficult. I think it's going to be an easier transition from where other teams would be in as if they had a new coach. So I think right now, as it stands, the 49ers do have a bright future if they can just get the right players in place, and it seems like they have that potential.
Certainly. Certainly. I mean, they are rebuilding, but I don't think they're going. I think a lot of people might be, not thinking about the 49ers because, okay, the Rams are going to make all this pub with moving to Los Angeles. If they can get the quarterback and it works out, the Seahawks are going to be what the Seahawks are, even though they've lost some players. And the Cardinals, I would hope that, with what they did last year, they do not go down. So the 49ers could be a sneaky team this year, if it all works out. So, speaking of the Seahawks, we got our resident Seahawks fan is Sean-Louis Philipsen to come on and talk about his team. Of course, SLP lives in the Portland area. He's done lots of radio work, a lot of times on the basketball side of things, but he knows his team. And here we go. About 15 minutes of SLP talking Seahawks. All right, doing the second interview for the podcast tonight, and with me is a longtime guest of the podcast when it's in its various iterations, and also a Seahawks fan that lives in the Northwest area, Mr. Sean-Louis Philipsen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sean. Had some little internet problems going on before we started, but happy to be back with you.
Yeah, man, it's good to have you back. It's been a while. So, the Seattle Seahawks, they had a mountain to climb last year in their season. They didn't start out very well. They had a nice fortune with the schedule and kind of ran off and didn't lose the game. And then they get to the playoffs and they almost make a miracle comeback against the would-be runner-ups in the Carolina Panthers. How do you grade that season?
I give it at least a B-, if I'm honest. I did project before the season started that the Seahawks would regress just a little bit. And to no surprise to my eye test, they did exactly that during the first half. Now, knowing the pressure that they came below 500, I believe, 5 weeks, and they really had to make that push. So they did just that. They won out most of their games and fortunate made the postseason, which to some maybe a little surprised, but me, I wasn't surprised. I did have them going as far as to going against the divisional team like Carolina. Seahawks would have won that game, but Cam Newton and his team did great, doing a great job in that first half, not allowing the Seahawks to get any momentum. And, again, a B- at best for the Seahawks.
Well, so you're not too down on the season.
No.
Go ahead.
No, not at all. I think this season was as expected for me. As I said, Seahawks will regress regardless of the wins. It's just to my eye test of how the team plays. Granted, Jimmy Graham didn't get a lot of playing time, and also Marshawn Lynch. And to no credit, he's retiring too. But I do like Travis Rolfe before he went down too. He was a good addition of helping getting this team back up with the running game and whatnot. I hope he'll be another great hope for Seahawks fans to praise on and have some more playing time, as well as I forgot the name, played for Kansas State in college ball, but he did a great job last year, not only filling in the void and some receiving time, but also doing some good job returning too. But I do like his game, and I hope he'll get some more opportunities to showcase his talents in Seattle.
So, what do you think about Jimmy Graham as a Seahawk? I mean, it seemed like he was improving, and really kind of getting a hold of the offense there towards the end until he got hurt. Do you
Right.
think he can really be an asset to the team, or is it just one of those things where that's just not the way that offense rolls?
I think it's in that second option you said there, Sean. At first, I thought when the Seahawks got it, Graham, from the trade, which sent Max Unger to the Saints, it looked like that Russell Wilson had a lot more options to go with, because not only do you have a good receiving core, let alone Doug Baldwin going off for the rest of the year, which was a big shock because I didn't expect anything like that from him. Now, Graham in the Seahawks set, he was mainly used for trying to be a blocker for Wilson, and that didn't really pan out to be great. So given that, I think Seattle would be wise to have him really get him out of Seattle, because clearly the offense that Pete Carroll has set for him is not comfortable for him. Graham is not the guy like he was with the Saints many of those years ago when he was a healthy player, is Graham. So I think Graham should leave Seattle. Basically, when Luke Wilson, I mean, he was playing tight end for a little bit. Seahawks didn't really look to him very often either. He was more of a third down specialist, and that's what Jimmy Graham is really being brought into the Seattle offense. This is more of a third down specialist, get a few touchdowns here and there, and that's the result.
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's. I think that he still has, and if you can kind of change a little bit of the offense, you can fit him in there. I think he's not a blocking guy, obviously, so you have to kind of just make certain plays for him and know that the ball's going there. And it did seem like he and Russell Wilson were getting a rapport there towards the end. So who knows? Maybe a full season there again with Russell Wilson and the team, and perhaps things improve. Who knows? I kind of tended to see it your way throughout most of the season last year.
Right.
But I have a feeling that it could certainly improve. So the Seahawks, their offseason was sort of up and down. You lose a guy like a Bruce Irvin. Russell Okung gets this very weird contract. Yeah, very weird contract.
Yeah.
You lose Alvin Bailey to the Browns, but then you get back. I mean, Marshawn Lynch decides to unretire, and then you do re-sign, a Chris Clemens and several other guys. What do you think about this offseason here? You lost some key guys, but you got to retain some as well.
Right. Well, I think you hit it right on the head, Sean, that the Seahawks offseason was kind of around a C. Not very great, but not very good. Just mediocre average. To the draft, though, they will have 9 picks. And knowing the GM and Pete Carroll, John Snyder, those two have drafted great talents over the last 4 or 5 years since those two were at the helm. So it will not surprise me that they will continue to draft good talents and hopefully get them to a better and a long-term potential future in the NFL. The main concern for me personally is just trying to get that O-line situated and steady, because Russell Wilson cannot take that many sacks like he did last year, especially early on in the year where they were just horrible in trying to keep Russell Wilson in the pocket long enough.
Yeah, for a long while, he was the most sacked quarterback in the league.
And to me, that's a surprise, yes, because to me, I feel like he doesn't get sacked that often, even though the numbers say that he has. But at the same rate, you can't have him being like a Michael Vick, where he's a quarterback that runs and being immobile. I think this upcoming season, if the O-line can keep Russell Wilson in the pocket for at least 3 to 5 seconds, have him kind of fling that football. And by the way, earlier, the guy I was trying to reference to is Tyler Lockett. I am high on that guy. He's going to be in his third year in the Seahawks, came from Kansas State. He is one of my favorite receivers out there. And if Jimmy Graham doesn't play out to par, then I look for Tyler Lockett, even though he's not a tight end. I still look for Wilson to get to Tyler Lockett to get him some catches, because he's my dark horse for a big season this year. But, yeah, that's kind of my take on the Seahawks.
Another guy, you're talking about Tyler Lockett, but Doug Baldwin came on and had another terrific season.
Those two have had a unbelievable duo that I think sets some records between them in touchdowns. That was a big shock, because normally Doug Baldwin is just in there getting 4 or 5 catches a game, but he really stepped up in a big leadership role. And Jermaine Kearse, who's back with the Seahawks, I believe. So you still have those two guys in your back pocket. There's no doubt. Doug Baldwin did help out a lot this year.
What do you think about talking about some of the guys here? I know this is talking about players that are gone, but
right,
how much of a big miss is going to be at Bruce Irvin for your team?
Well, anytime you have Bruce Irvin on your team, of course, when he departs from the Seahawks, it is a big loss, but there's always another person to gain. And I think that's the thing where some Seattle fans think, oh, we lost a big potential guy. He could have stayed. No. Keep in mind, there are a little bit of free agents here and there, not to know who's going to be on the team yet, and draft picks. And that's kind of the thing where I see where, you lose a Bruce Irvin. There's still other guys that, okay, maybe not play up to him, but can be a solid player. And that's what I like to see from Seattle.
So looking in that draft, you already mentioned that offensive line is a priority. Do you have any other priorities with those number of picks that you have?
Hard to say at this moment. Maybe you can go after a defensive tackle a little bit. I've heard there's some insiders like a defensive tackle from Nebraska and Malik Collins, who is developing a hard-nosed player, great feet, great hand quickness for a size at 6'2", 300 pounds. But I think he could very well thrive. Nose tackling in Andrew Billings from Baylor. He continues to go. Pete Carroll continues to go into the postseason looking for a dominant defense. So he could be like a Brandon Mebane type player with good skills as an interior playmaker. But other than that, I mostly importantly, I really see more of the O-line being a factor. I'm still debating on who really gets the call, the nod, if you will, to be on the roster. So to me, also, it's more of a wait and see.
Have the Seahawks added anyone that really caught your eye that wasn't with the team last season, or has it been all about just re-signing the ones you had?
Basically re-signing the ones that we already have. That's kind of the big thing early on. You don't want to lose too many of your players, otherwise you're going to have your roster being into a complete overhaul, which has been seen far too many times outside of the Seahawks, like the Cleveland Browns of all people, who overhaul their roster every single year. So, Seahawks fans should not be too desperate. There's still some offseason to be played. We still got the NFL draft coming up. You never know what can happen.
So how did you feel about this whole Marshawn Lynch retiring, unretiring stuff?
Oh, man, Marshawn. I honestly do not care for him. I mean, he's a great running back for any team, let alone the Seahawks. But I think it caused a little too much drama in my book to me he's relevant when he's on the football field. He's not relevant when he's off the field. I mean, the injuries did take a toll on him, and we, as fans and analysis people, we tend to, his production went down. He hasn't been the same beast mode that we were accustomed to seeing. So, yeah, given that, Marshawn, it's really hard to say about the guy.
Well, you would consider this a successful offseason. Now, moving forward, say you're in training camp, the draft is over, all the stuff you say.
Right.
You would say this is a successful offseason because this happened.
Right. I would say it would be a successful offseason if they get the pieces set. Everything is in chess, right? You know, you want to get the right pieces for the opportunity for players to perform. So off-season would be a success if the Seahawks organization get the right pieces.
All right, fair enough. Well, SLP, I think you kind of answered all of our questions here. So I want to thank you again for joining us, and we may or may not do another one of these after the draft, going through all the teams and stuff, and if we do, or if we do a division thing, whatever, I'll be sure to get back in contact with you for that.
Great. And as always, thank you for the time.
Oh, well, again, thank you, and you have a good night, sir.
Thank you.
All right, that was SLP talking about the Seahawks. I mean, you know, this team being as great as it is and being so close to getting past what would be the runner-ups last season with the team they had, I mean, they don't have to do a whole lot of shuffling, but anything stand out to you from what SLP said?
I think the thing that stood out to me was the fact that they have 9 draft picks. And like you said, they don't have that many holes, but now they can sit there and look at it, some of the pieces that they have lost, and they're going to lose more as it goes along just because that's how the salary cap works. And if they're able to find magic in a bottle like they did the last few years and continue to really find those hidden gems in the draft and restock, I mean, you could be looking at the Patriots of the NFC here, where they keep making things work. I mean, I completely agree with him. There's not many front offices that you can trust more than Seattle lately. Seattle has done a great job of making the correct moves. I'm with him where I do feel like the Jimmy Graham trade was their only misstep that they've really done over the last few years. But with 9 draft picks, they have a lot of great chances to rebuild a team that really hasn't fallen off yet.
Yeah, you know, something else I kind of found that was, you know, interesting with the Jimmy Graham talk was interesting. I think that Jimmy Graham, you know, like Sean pointed out in the interview, had kind of started to kind of see his way in the offense and kind of start to gel a little bit. Russell Wilson and him were kind of getting something going on there, and that's great. It's good for the offense, exactly why they had him. Here's why they sacrificed a draft pick for him. But another guy I really look at here is Marshawn Lynch. Now, we talk about him ad nauseum because he makes a nuisance of himself. He, of course, hits the front page of the newspapers a lot of times just because of those idiotic things that he does. But he is what he is. And I think it's funny that LSLP is not a big fan, even though he is a fan of that team. So I wonder how many of this fan base really does look at Lynch as a pain in the neck that is a necessary evil because he does help them, despite the fact that they kind of at times wish that he would just go on. I know there's probably a lot of bad guys out there who want to see Rawls on a more regular basis anyway, and I'm kind of one of those guys.
Oh, I'm sure you will anyway. I can't imagine Marshawn Lynch, even if he's injury-free, which that's going to be hard for him to do, it's just going to be all of a sudden be that old Marshawn Lynch. I mean, he's going to fight for yards and stuff, but you can obviously see it's deteriorating. I think when you have 9 picks, honestly, you know you have Rawls, but you know Marshawn Lynch he's a one and done. He's going to play this season and probably not playing again.
Mm-hmm.
Go get you another running back that maybe you can trust, and you put him out there with Rawls and see if you can come up with a good 1-2 combo, because I still don't have any faith in Christian Michael. They keep re-signing him, but, you know, it is what it is at that point with him. Offensive line is obviously their biggest need, and SOP kind of did a really good job of pointing that out. So grab as many as you can, I guess, with those all those picks you got. So anything else you guys feel like needs to be said here?
Not for me. I think it's pretty good. I mean,
all right, so that'll do it for this edition of the Football to the Max. Glad to be back and back in the groove with all the podcasts now. So all the To the Max family have had at least one. Thank you for listening to this one, and we'll be back on Monday night with. I've already got a Rams fan locked in, and I've got a Cardinals fan locked in. So, Cardinals and Rams on the offseason analysis. Maybe more talk about the schedule release, and then whatever else has been going on in the NFL as we get closer and closer to that NFL draft. We'll after we get done with these two teams, we might do a 4-team. We might do a double on Thursday just to go ahead and get the NFC East out of the way for the next Thursday show, and then we can just focus on the draft entirely with a few weeks to go after that. So we'll see how that goes. But the NFC East, we kind of know who we're going after. As far as like I already have those. I have plenty of people for each team that I can, go get if one person doesn't work out. So that's the nice thing about having lots of friends with various teams and their rivals. But we'll get more on that between Monday and Thursday. Again, thank you for listening. Rate and review for us on iTunes and Stitcher if that helps. Of course, go subscribe to that WTM Network for the all the other great podcasts that are part of this network. Of course, we've got the slew of wrestling podcasts. But, of course, Randy, you had a new episode this week of your Backlog Busting. Talk about it with him.
Yeah, if you're into old school video games, definitely check out the Backlog Busting project in our recent podcast. We had 3 very artsy games, I guess you could say. We both played a wonderful game called Bastion, which kind of surprised me in how much I didn't like parts of it, even though I enjoyed the game. I played the best Vita game you can get out there in Tearaway, and Wes played the Banner Saga, which he really enjoyed. So if you like some of those indie titles, definitely check that out. And we also are really looking for your guys' help because we have another Friday the 13th episode here in a month. So you have 2 weeks to vote for a game that we have to play. And we decided since it is the second Friday the 13th episode, why not make it all sequels? So you guys, if you go to backlogbusting.com, can vote between Final Fantasy II, Hotline Miami 2, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, Super Mario Brothers 2, or Half-Life 2. Whichever one gets the most votes, Wes and I will play that game.
You should go vote for Final Fantasy 2 just to torture them.
Yeah.
If you guys do, I might have to quit, because Wes already has me set to play the Paper Mario 1000-Year Door, which is going to take a lot of time on top of it, so please don't.
Well, we can always torture Wes with Hotline Miami 2.
Yes, that would be better.
But,
torturing Wes is always more fun.
Well, yeah, until, again, on Monday night, Tuesday morning, thank you for listening, and we'll see you then. Later, everybody. Oh, whoops. Almost, where the hell is my... There it goes.